Vodkast.
Hey, Jeff Manchester Music. It's been a minute. It's been a little while. Why? Oh my God. Ozone 8, Neutron 2. Crazy. It's been absolutely crazy. I don't know if you can say I've got some stuff boiling in the background. I've got some stock because it's Canadian Thanksgiving was a little while ago, so I'm exploring my stock options. Always open with a joke. Now, what's been going on? Well, yeah, Isotope. I mean, I don't want this to be like a guerrilla ad for Isotope or whatever. I just can't really talk about what's been going on without, like talking about what's been going on. So I was in Boston. I was there for 9 days doing video work over there. I was at Reverb, which is awesome. If you ever go to Chicago, go to Reverb, knock on the door and be like, hey, can I... They're probably too busy, but they're really nice and professional and awesome and super patient with me because I didn't have my audio interface. Maybe you'll see the video. Maybe it's so bad that they won't post it. No, it went okay because they cut it up and made it look awesome. But my audio interface just didn't work, so I'm trying to do all these like Neutron demos and Ozone demos. The first interface, they're like, oh, we'll give you like, because they have everything. It's Reverb. They're like, oh, we have an Apollo. They sent one, so we use that. And like my Mac is like one of the new Macs. It's like, one of those new Touch Bar USB-C Macs with Thunderbolt 3 USB-C. I think they're backwards compatible. So you can't, it was a Thunderbolt Apollo. So like you can't use 1 and 2 and I didn't have the adapter. It's like, oh, we'll use this audio fuse thing from Arturia, which is cool and everything, but it was only sending left channel out. I don't know why. So we had to pull out this like old, like Kawasaki mixer thing, which had like USB, and that worked. It was great. So we had to go old school, and they chopped it up, and it looks awesome. Well, I don't know if it looks awesome, but it looks awesome again because of their reputation and excellency. And then I went to Sweetwater in Fort Wayne. Not bragging. I was there. I'm kidding. I make jokes, but Fort Wayne is actually really cool. Don't sleep on it. Fort Wayne is, first of all, best food I've ever had. One of the best restaurants, best meals I've ever had in my life. A place called Tolone, T-O-L-O-N. Incredible. Amazing food. And Sweetwater itself, you don't know what Sweetwater is. I mean, they ship instruments and tech all over the country. They do all kinds of community work. This huge facility in Fort Wayne where you've got like, music lessons and this huge Amazon-style warehouse and video production, and they've got like a gym and personal trainers and all this stuff, and like the big metal slide that goes down. They have Gear Fest. It's become a real thing, and I think that's awesome. This idea that you can take, people's passion and love for music and instruments and all this stuff, and just turn it into this thing that makes money and makes people happy and gets people motivated and excited about music and all this stuff, and that's what they're doing over there, and like kudos to them. And I did some videos with them, and they're super nice. Those are online now. They chopped those up and they're ready, which was nice because I feel like Reverb was like a rehearsal because of just all the technical issues that were my fault. It's my laptop and it's my interface that weren't working, and they were cool. But anyway, best food, whatever. Don't sleep on Sweetwater and Fort Wayne and Indiana at large. Fun snow tubing in Indiana as well, as I learned when I was at my sister's place for Christmas last year. What am I getting at? I don't know. What was I doing? I was doing all this stuff. But I made sure to like leave the channel with a really cool video before I left, and that's the one that I did with Daniel James, the interview. And that was a milestone for me because he's someone who convinced me, whether he knew it or not, well, he found out anyway, but to start the channel, that I could do it. And as I said to him in the interview, it's really because I saw that he was just being himself, and he wasn't being like a YouTuber and with all the quick cuts and all this stuff. He just wasn't doing that. That made me feel like maybe if I'm myself, which is kind of on that same level, not talent-wise because he's super talent and I still have a lot to learn, but that I could just kind of come on and do my thing and maybe talked about EQ and mixing and mastering and all that stuff, and maybe people would watch. So that was incredible. And it's funny because the interview was sort of born of this moment where there was like he was kind of mad at me. He was like, why are you taking the piss out of reviewers? Because I made this post, people right now watching this video like, here he goes again. I'm not going there, but you can comment. I swear I'm not going there. But he wrote this thing on this Facebook group that I belong to, that I'm a part of, and he was, because I posted a video where I was kind of coming down on like. Anyway, and I messaged him and we hit it off on Facebook Messenger because he thought that he was a reviewer, and I don't consider him. I guess he does reviews, but I don't consider him to be like a sample library review person. To me, he's a first impressions guy. He's an overview guy. He's a let's dive into this thing and see how it goes kind of guy. He's not one of those like, I've been playing with this for 2 weeks and here it is and let's dig, whatever. I'm probably butchering it and he'll watch this and hate me, but we patched it up. We made it work. Daniel and I got on the channel and we did an interview and it was awesome. And I'm not going to get into my grievances. I'm really not, but I want to explain where I'm coming from because I've realized that I repeat stuff a lot and I have the same sort of thing. And I came up with a metaphor that sort of explains it to me anyway. And that's, for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do all the backstory because I would just open this up again. And the Vodkast viewers are cool. They're nerds. They've watched all of them. So you guys should know what I'm referring to here. Sneezing, that's what it's like with me. If I have something on my mind, if I have something that I'm thinking about that I want to get off my chest, it's like sneezing. When I sneeze, I trajectile spray, and I make a big mess, and I do it more than once, and I'm really loud. I'm one of those jerks. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just terrifying in an airport or something. And there are some people who are more just like, you know, like my girlfriend, who's just like this little whimper, like if a flower sneezed. It's like inside, and it's just once and that's it. How I sneeze is how I deal with things that are on my mind. I repeat them more than once, and I spray them, and you know what I mean? Like I do it a couple times, and then it's out of my system and it's done. But it needs to be sprayed and trajectiled. It needs to be out there before it can disappear and get out of my system. It just has to do that. So if I have the same things to say about people on the internet, whatever, it's because that's just the way that I am. I get my emotions out like I sneeze. Some people don't do that. They have different ways of sneezing. Some people maybe sneeze loud, but they put a tissue up here so they affect less people. It's brutal. Like there's this wall that I sneeze onto when I'm working here. This is disgusting. I have a girlfriend, so I'm not even trying anymore. There's like DNA, like the next, Zika on this wall. They'll just turn around like I'm working. I don't want to like reach for it, whatever. I'll just like sneeze into the wall. And I'm moving out soon. So anyway, that's totally disgusting. But here we are, Vodkast. By the way, if you want to write a question, why would you after all that? Vodcastpodcaster@gmail.com, or hit me up on Twitter or Facebook, or leave a comment in the YouTube comments, because that's definitely a way that people get in touch. Let's just, okay, so what did we cover? We covered Sweetwater, we covered Reverb, Fort Wayne. I was in Boston. Yeah, but I'm busy again. I leave. You're probably not going to hear from me for a little bit because I go to New York next week for AES. I'm doing Imstafesta in Toronto. So if you're watching this channel, I think in a few days on Saturday, I don't know, at Ryerson University, I'm doing ozone neutron stuff. So I'll be there in that sort of capacity and as an exhibitor. And you can just check it out there. And come say hi, Manchester Music. Identify yourself. You don't have to do that. But just say Manchester Music in a really cool way and do this. And I'll be like, okay, you're cool. We can talk. That's ridiculous. Don't believe that. Don't buy into that. So let's jump into this episode of the Vodkast. I've got my wine. It's not a proper vodcast, but who cares these days? But again, get in touch with me on those channels. Talk to me. I'll be away for a little bit, but I am doing a mastering class, especially now that Ozone 8 is out and I can talk about it because I'll be using Ozone 8 because there's some really cool stuff in there, and I am paid to know a lot about Ozone 8, so I will go pretty deep, pretty in depth. But what else is happening on the channel outside of that? Like, I don't know. I love doing this channel and this vodcast. I've got like 6,000 subscribers now. I'm just gonna take a little sippy dippy here. I've got like 6,000 subscribers, which is, it's amazing. To me, it's perfect. Like, this channel is as big as I want it to be, and I've never said that about anything in my life. It's as big as it needs to be, and I'm happy about that because I've tried to stay away from, like, sexy clickbait titles like the 5 things you need to know. I knew I did do a video that's called that. And ironically, like those are my most clicked videos. People do watch those the most out of everything that I do, which I'm really happy about. You know, that's great. But when I started the channel, I was like, I don't want to edit. I don't want to do all these things because I just don't want to, like, I don't want to be a YouTuber. And I guess I sort of am one. But it was really after seeing Daniel James that I realized that I don't have to be a caricature of myself. I don't have to affect a personality. I can just be me and talk about what I know. And even if the concepts are simple, like compression or EQ or whatever, people are going to pay attention and learn something and take something away. And there's a thing I want to read before I get to the questions that'll hopefully drive that home. But I just want to take a second just to say like how much I enjoy getting just like really smart, intelligent questions from you guys, and really smart people who want to learn and want to create. And it's just like, it's like a diary. Like I feel like I have to come back and make videos and contribute because it matters to me, and clearly it matters to people out there. So thank you for being part of this. I don't want this channel to get, I don't want to start doing, there's this thing that's been happening recently where I don't know, like I hit an algorithm button or something with Google, and now I'm getting all these weird, I have this a couple invites from people who are just like not related to this channel or anything that I do, like at all. And it's flattering, but like people with viewers in the thousands, like hundreds of thousands, wanting to collaborate. I think what they mean by that is like, I will introduce you to my audience and you can introduce me to yours, which is flattering because I have like 6,000 and they have hundreds. But I don't get it. Like it's not germane. It's not relevant to what we're doing here. I mean, I turned on this one off with this one guy, like great guy. I'm not going to say who it is, but like, just why would you want to talk to me? You know what I mean? It just seems like this weird sort of YouTube thing where you talk to me and I talk to you and we sort of shake hands and both sort of pretend to be interested in each other, if only to have our audiences meet. Kind of like Taylor Swift and Kendrick Lamar when they did Bad Blood together. It's like, what? And then you're like, oh, it makes sense. Kendrick is saying, hey, my audience, here's Taylor Swift, like this pop star, and Taylor Swift is like, hey, everyone, Kendrick Lamar. So it was like this mutual business handshake thing, and that's never been what this channel is about, ever. And for me to talk to someone who, you know, has amassed like almost 1 million subscribers just talking about guitar pedals, people would come on this channel and be like, what are you doing? Like, why? Like, so just the channel keeps me happy and humble, and I'm really pleased that people keep coming back and the channel continues to grow. Maybe it's all bots. I have no idea. I don't think it is. But anyone willing to sort of sit here and listen to me rant is like a friend to me, because I like to talk. I'm sort of probably not really fit for the paradigm that YouTube is going for with like super quick videos and fast editing and all that stuff. But the people who are here, I think, I just want to thank you. It means a lot to me, a lot. And I get all these nice comments from, again, really smart people that just want to learn and are learning. And that's kind of what I wanted. I want to just jump into this thing that this person wrote. I'm going to read the whole message. It's really heartwarming, and it really makes me feel like the channel is going in a good direction and we're on the right path. This might be a name familiar to all you vodka heads out there. So this is from Johan Johansson. I don't know if it was Johan Johansson. I don't know. He didn't correct me because he's polite or something. But he says, hey, Jeff, first off, I've been following your channel since Vodkast episode 2. And in the 7th episode, you answered a few questions of mine, which I really appreciated. Thank you. You're welcome. Since then, he says, I've been watching every single one of your videos, and they've been incredibly helpful and motivating. He says, I want you to know that I finally got my very first paid gig for this full American horror film called, hopefully you're okay, Johan, with me mentioning the name, A Haunting at Silver Falls 2. I've been following your tips and tricks, how to approach economical aspects, my health and my workflow, and actually got the gig. By the way, they did know what a cue sheet was, but I'm pretty sure I looked somewhat professional when I asked for one. He put a smiley face. Anyway, I want to thank you for sharing this valuable information and experience. And when combining this with a lot of hours and dedication, it worked. And he put a lot in bold letters. It's been 2 weeks so far, and I treat this like a regular job. He says, I get up at 8 a.m. I start working at 9 a.m. I have a lunch break for an hour, sometimes a little more, and I close my project at 6 p.m. and I go for a walk. Saturdays, I have a few beers and do whatever comes to mind without thinking too much. And it says I finally edit sober. And this is a thing I said. I didn't say this. Someone said it. But write drunk, edit sober, which I think is valuable. Don't get wasted and write or do that. But, be creative in the moment when you're writing and edit sober. So he continues. Actually, I come up with a pretty good motif for one of the characters, as you pointed out, to be sure to edit and polish it when your ears and mind are fresh and well rested, as I am totally not tonight reading this. Thank you so much, Jeff. You are such a great, genuine guy. Hope to meet you someday. Best regards, Johan Johansson. Thank you, Johan. And this is a really cheesy, we've had a lot of fun here moment, guys. But, I hope that someone out there listening, it sounds like a pyramid scheme. Like, Johan followed the 12 steps of Manchester music, and you can't know. But, cool. Now he's getting paid for a movie that he's on, and he's working. And to me, I read this quote by Tom Petty. It's like, do what you love and make enough to make rent, and that's like a career or something like that. And butchering it, and he just died. So that's legacies, ladies and gentlemen. That's how they get twisted. YouTube. But no, that's awesome. Thank you for that message, Johan Johansson. A very sweet guy. I'm really happy for you. This is really great. So thank you for writing. Okay. Moving along. No. The next question comes from Pedro Parusolo. I don't know. Parusolo? Not really sure. Where did you have mentoring? He writes. And I think he's referring to a video where I was talking about drums. I was talking about how to drums. Oh my God, speakers. I was talking about speakers, monitors, what to listen for when you get them and all that stuff. I'm staring at my Yamahas and my Focals, and I can't believe I looked at them and I said drums. Oh my God. So he's referring to that video where I think I say I had a mentor or someone like that. I use the word mentor who, for him, trying on speakers is like trying on shoes. You gotta put them on. It's not enough to just go out and, see everyone with a pair of Adidas or high tops or I don't know, whatever. Pick your shoe. I think Blundstone was the example that I used. And just because everyone has them on doesn't mean they're going to fit with you. And they didn't fit on my feet, my disgusting Hobbit E-width tennis shoe feet. And for him, that was kind of like the KRKs. He went into a studio, I think, and they had them there. And he's like, oh my God, they sound awesome. He brought them back in his space. It just didn't work. So that's why I mentioned mentor in that video. Looking back, and to answer your question, Pedro, I think I might have oversold that. He wasn't really a mentor. He wasn't really. He was an older guy that he was an instructor at a school. It just sounds like he picked me up in a van or something. He was great guy. Instructor at the audio engineering school that I went to. Really awesome guy. And I think that back then when I made that video, I'd either just graduated or was just getting started or something. So I probably had that. I kind of romanticized the dynamic between him and I, but in some ways he was a bit of a mentor. Really awesome guy, instructor, and it just so happened that he was recording something, and he asked if I wanted to help him record. It was a string quartet here in Toronto. It was someone's living room. They were recording some A-list players, so cello, a couple violins, and a bass or something like that. Mic'd them all up, rented the gear, and it was a really great experience for me. And I think that I assumed it was a mentorship, but it was more just like a learning experience, and he was an awesome guy because there hasn't been any sort of sustained, mentorship in the way that I think mentorships are usually characterized where, two people go up to a mountain, they battle to the death, and then the other person takes their place. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't a mentorship in the proper sense of a sustained sort of period of learning and development and then a handing off of the torch, or I don't know what I'm talking about. But a few people, it's funny, have asked me if I would mentor them, and I always laugh because I'm like, dude, I'm not Hans Zimmer. I don't, have you can see my Dyson in the corner. Or maybe you can't see it, but there's roaches climbing the wall. I have nothing to, all I have to teach you is watch the videos and also get a pretty good understanding. I'm not being self-deprecating for effect, but like watch the videos, go and look at other stuff, go to an audio engineering school. I am not some sort of like mecca of information and knowledge. I'm just one guy. So I was never mentored. I would have loved it though. And since we're here doing, Jeff's special, I would have loved it. And I actually had a mentor, so to speak, but in a different life. I had a mentor as I was going through university, and then I did my master's, and I was about to do my PhD, and he sort of shepherded me through that transition. And eventually it's funny because I left. I was going to do a PhD in new media, and I did my thesis, my master's thesis on like the future of terrestrial radio, like a button in the car, and how they were competing in Canada with like streaming services. Pedro was like, I have tuned out, buddy. There's no one here, but I'm going to keep going. And he was a great guy, and it just wasn't for me doing a PhD. I got to my first day of orientation. Ironically enough, here we go, at Ryerson, York, which is a university, a couple universities here in Toronto where I will be. It's really crazy, actually, that I'm bringing this up because this was not planned. I'm going to be there for Imstafesta, like doing exhibition work at the place where like I would have been like probably almost done my PhD right now. I would have been done at that school. I would have been a student there. This channel, none of this would exist. This whole life would not have existed had I gone down that path. But I didn't, because I got to orientation, and it was like a bad date. I was looking around at the faculty and the people and the other PhD candidates, and I was like, I have nothing in common with you people. I don't like you. I'm not doing this for 5 years. It'd be like a forced marriage. And so I left. And my girlfriend, different girl at the time, was wonderful, and she sort of walked me to a PhD. Walked me to a degree, sort of. Well, she walked me to, because I couldn't do it on my own, to withdraw from Ryerson. I handed in my sheet. It was like a week into my program, and I was just like, there you go, can't do it. I turned down like a pretty big scholarship and everything, and then. Let's see here, like 4, 5, 6 months went by, and then I went to audio engineering school. So I never had a mentor in the audio sense. I think that for me, it would have been extremely valuable. And that's why I'm learning a lot now at Isotope. And every time I get to go down, I try to politely pick people's brains. We have at the company, and again, I don't want this to be a guerrilla marketing campaign, some very, very smart people. Our principal DSP engineer, Alexei Lukin, he's a teacher in Russia. He works for us. He's been there since before RX1, and he has basically nurtured every iteration of RX and really sort of helped make it into something that it is today. I don't want to make it sound like he's the sole person behind that product, but he really informed a lot of the algorithms and a lot of the look and feel, and just sort of a lot of the soul of RX is really him, and I get to work with him. We have a great engineer who's working a lot of machine learning stuff for us with Neutron, and now with Ozone and tonal balance control, and he's also an incredible guy. Maybe another guy is Jonathan Weiner, who is a mastering engineer, and maybe to some of you a familiar name. He's going to be doing some stuff at AES, and here's a guy who mastered everything that Bowie did on RCA. So, mastered Nirvana. And I say Nirvana, or Nirvana? I think I say Nirvana, which is weird. I heard a radio DJ say that, like, he talked to Kurt Cobain before he died, and Kurt was like, yeah, it's Nirvana. And I always say Nirvana, but I think it's Nirvana, whatever. So I think he did In Utero. Anyway, he has a long, long history of mastering. So I always try and learn from him. And I'd say, Pedro, even though you didn't ask me, as far as mentoring goes, I got a piece of advice. I got most of the best advice I ever got when I was at university, not doing music stuff, doing academic stuff. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got was, go to where you think you're going to learn the most from the people around you. And I would kind of modify that to say, try and learn the most from the people around you. If you can't go to the place where you're going to learn the most from the people around you, take a look around, and see who's there, how you can learn from them in a very polite, tactful way, and learn as much as you can. The most underrated resource at an audio engineering school are the instructors. I saw so many people leave early, just like screw off after they completed their assignments, and to me there was nothing more valuable, nothing that made me more of a richer person than to just pick the brains of our instructors after the class was over. It's just, you're talking to people who've been on the front lines of the industry for a while. Why would you turn away from the opportunity to annoy them with your questions if it meant that you would learn something that would help you in a future moment where you're sitting there with two cables, you don't know where to patch them, and then you think back to this conversation that you had or whatever. That's kind of like very Slumdog Millionaire, but like it's anyway. So learn from people as much as you can, and that's what I'm trying to do at Isotope in a polite way, of course, because they have other things to do, and Lord knows so do I. So that was a very strange answer to your question, Pedro, but that would be my story for if I ever had mentoring. Nope. There's the too long didn't read answer. Okay, John on Twitter asks, what do you think of the Mark II Complete Control series? Did you get one? Now, yes, on Twitter I made a big deal about getting one because Native Instruments are super cool, and they sent me one, and I'm sitting in front of it now. It's right below the desk. However, I have had the hardest time getting this thing to communicate with my computer. And I don't want to make it sound like it's anything to do with Native Instruments per se. The piece of hardware is solid. It turns on. It does what it's supposed to do. It communicates to an extent with my machine. But oh my God, this has been a real challenge because it's not finding Contact 5, which is insane because I use Contact every day. It's just it can't find Contact in my machine. So for people who don't know, one of the kind of the wake-up calls for people when they get this product is in order to really take advantage of the software-hardware sort of parity integration that exists within Complete Control, you have to use the Complete Control sort of app, which is in I believe it's in audio software, instrument software track or whatever, in Logic anyway. You can't use Contact. You can obviously and still kind of use a little bit of this keyboard, though I think it won't display the lights and the key switching lights and all that stuff and that sort of functionality. You have to play within the Complete Control app, but you just sort of instantiate it on a track, and then you can modify things and do scales. And I might be wrong. I haven't done my review yet just because I have not been able to summon and play stuff from Complete Control using this keyboard. I just can't do it. And I just want to say that Native Instruments have been super helpful. Mick Benjamins in particular, who's their community manager, in helping me get this off the ground, because they obviously sent one hoping that I would talk about it on the channel, and I need it to work for me to talk about it. But I'm excited to do a review and to do it the way that I want to, which is after a long time with this product, maybe a couple of weeks or whatever, really playing with it, getting to know it, getting a few dents and scratches in there so that at least I can say that I've spent a long time with this thing, and I can say with confidence, here's what I like, here's what I think could sort of change, or here's what I hope in the Mark III or whatever. So I don't want to say too much about this keyboard and how it feels, how it plays, how it interacts with Logic, and how it sort of helps compose. I'm going to save that for the sort of official walkthrough or series of videos that I do on it. I will say that I'm very thankful and appreciative that Native Instruments sent it. I just wish it could work with the software because it ain't. But they've been super nice and kind and cool, so kudos to them. But hopefully we can get on this fix, because oh my goodness, it's crazy. Just the extent to which it's not talking to my gear. Now, the last question here comes from Jim Cunningham. This might be one of the longest vodcasts I've ever done. So he wrote on a YouTube video that I had, he says, when consolidating all the cues in Pro Tools, and he's talking about a video that I did where I showed how to do composing for trailers, where I had everything sort of in Ableton, and then I bounced everything to Pro Tools and lined it up sort of like because Ableton that's where I used to compose. Now it's Logic, but Ableton, Logic, whatever, those are the places where I compose, and then I like to do my mixing. It's weird in Pro Tools. I love mixing in Pro Tools. So I like mixing in Logic too, but if I'm lining everything up and sort of re-recording, it's going to happen in Pro Tools. It's the architecture and the workflow I enjoy. So that's what this question is about. I would have liked to have seen how you dealt with different BPMs and cues. Did you use a tempo track to modulate tempo in Pro Tools as it played through the consolidated mix, or did you compress accelerate Q1 from 74 or something like that to 82 BPM to match Qs 3 and 4, and hence the trailer have a consistent BPM all the way through? Would love to see any future videos you have that you might feel inclined to make. Although you mentioned a few things, would like to hear more about how you work through deciding on general tone, motifs, phrases, and instrumentation based on what you're seeing in the video dialogue and how you align the musical motifs, etc. with the video. Jim, this is an awesome question. Let's take a sip and unpack. Okay, so I haven't composed for a trailer in a little bit, but one of the things that I do, especially if I have a trailer to compose for, is I probably go about this in a way that might appear kind of inelegant and long-winded, like my answers, and roundabout. What I'll do is I'll bring in the trailer into, let's say, Logic, whatever you use. Just imagine you have the video file overlaid at the top in SMPTE or something like that. Hopefully you've got timecode burnt in timecode so you can see where you are. And based on the cue sheet, I will know that I have to compose, let's say 30 seconds of music to fit from here to here. I'll go in, look at my cue sheet, look at what the SMPTE readout is, and then I'll make a marker in my Logic session where that is, and then I'll do my a 2-pop that leads into that moment. Sometimes I won't, sometimes I just know that it'll work, and I'll just sort of put my keys down or whatever. But the bottom line is, what I'm doing is I'm creating every piece separate. Every cue in a trailer will get its own session in Logic. So I'm not using anything to sort of beat ramp, which would probably be a lot smarter, but I feel it's not the way that I like to work. I'm not using a grand master file which has everything in it, and the tempo map, like you said, or the tempo track goes up and down, and I sort of modulate the automation such that the BPM changes or goes up or whatever. For me, I work in a very sort of weird way where even when I mix and master, they're separate sessions. So the same is true of doing cue work. Everything has its own session because to me, it requires its own sort of mindset. So again, I look out, and this is as detailed as I get when it comes to SMPTE and markers and all that stuff, because I'm not that kind of person. So I don't work like that. I don't like working like that with, I know that I have to punch in and punch out here and there. No. So I just take a look at where I am. I put my marker there and say, I have to start the cue at least a second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds before this moment in the SMPTE, in the time code, which I'll mark. And then I know that I have to be done with this cue at this moment. And I will compose the cue there. And I'll include the reverb tails when I export. And I just simply take, copy and paste, drag it into my eventual Pro Tools session, which I think I did in the video. And hopefully I'm answering your question. I'm not bungling it up, because I think I showed that workflow pretty sort of clearly and evidently in that video. And then I'll go from there. I'll drag things in, and if I need to add more reverb, if I need to add sort of connective tissue with delay or other time-based effects, I'll make it work in the Pro Tools file to create sort of a seamless flow. But it's just so happened that when I do this, when I adopt this workflow where every cue in a trailer gets its own session, and then I bounce it out, when I put it together, it just works. It doesn't always work perfectly. Like I said, I might have to go back and bring in some time-based stuff in Pro Tools. Every now and then I got to go back and maybe add a couple seconds, of just maybe something decays a little bit, a piano note or whatever, and then I export it again. But it works. I don't know how, but I feel like in my mind, I've got a good roadmap of the macro picture of the Pro Tools session with the entire trailer. And when I combine piece by piece, allow enough time for reverb tails and all that, and export, bring it back into my sort of tape machine with just the whole trailer there. I bring things in, and it just works, just lines up really well. Now, other composers might look at that sort of setup and be totally horrified that I do things in that way. That might be the case, but for me, that's the system that I work with. It's funny because I'm not a very marker timecode kind of guy, but with file management, I'm pretty good. So I'll make sure to have tags, file names that correspond to the cue sheet, so that I can look at the cue sheet or just memorize the cue sheet and then go into my folder and see everything that I've exported and know exactly which cue that is, where it goes, how it fits. Sometimes I'll even take like a screen cap of the time code so I know where to line it up in the Pro Tools session, if that makes any sense. But the only time I use tempo tracks, or that I play with any sort of compression or elongating of sections or whatever, is within those individual sessions. So if something needs to happen where we have a rising action, I will do it in a contained individual session where I'll program some automation where the BPM comes up. We beat ramp by like 20 BPM or 30 BPM, so we go from like 100 to 130 BPM with a big rise or something like that. Although I seldom do that, just not for the work that I'm normally doing. But the bottom line is everything gets its own kind of cue, and then it exports, and it just seems to work. And I have never stopped doing it like that. Everything happens, I export it, and then it all kind of magically comes together, and I'm pretty proud of that. Now, sometimes what I'll do is if I have, let's say, two cues, like Q34 and Q35, and they're pretty similar in DNA musically, like they both have certain instrumentation, one might be more aggressive than the other. Sometimes I will give those to their own session, Q34 and 35 for example's sake, and I'll just compose them within each other, even though they're separate cues and they should be separate sessions. If they just happen to work, I can find a way to fluidly connect them. But I found that by building this monster session where I've got, cues 1 to 35, everything is in the same session and blah, 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 it doesn't really work for me. There's too much to manage, and the mindset is different. And also, I get a little bit of paralysis by analysis where I can change too much, and I want to change too much. I want to tweak stuff, and I think what it could be is the other side of it is that I'm still remembering when I had a laptop that really couldn't handle that intense a session, where I'd get these big CPU spikes if I added more than 3 or 4 or 5 instances of contact. So that I've got a bit of PTSD from those days. So that might be what is dissuading me from doing a big monster session for a 2-minute and 30-second cue, a trailer where I've got maybe 35 cues in there. It's just the way that I like to work, and I find that I can be more efficient, even though on paper it might look to someone else like a very inefficient way to go about this trailer composing business. So hopefully that answers your question. You wanted me to talk about other things like tones, motifs, phrases, instrumentations, based on what I'm seeing in the video and the dialogue. I've talked a little bit about that in other vodcasts before, and maybe I'll do another sort of video about like where I find inspiration, and especially where I find inspiration from now, because things change, and the things that inspire me are usually they're very sort of unorthodox now. It used to be I'd go see a movie and that would be very inspiring, but now sometimes I'll just be, sounds weird as hell, but like I'll just be watching two people talk, or I'll be not listening to music, not sort of forcing it in like, propaganda, and it'll come out of something else. So maybe I'll do a video like that. I'm also getting kind of loopy because it's 1:30 in the morning and I work from home, but it still works. So I should probably cut it off here. So thank you so much for watching. I've stopped doing the podcast version of this just because it's just too much work to have to export a file, upload it, make sure I tag and name it. If I had like an assistant that was helping me with that, I would do it like that. But I don't want to give this work to anyone. I just can't be bothered. It's funny, Daniel James was we're both talking about how much we love Christian Henson's channel. And it's really, really good. Christian Henson Music, he's one of the co-founders of Spitfire. And we're both just talking in the interview about like how gorgeously produced his videos are and everything. And I kind of tried to do something like that when I was in Chicago, where I was taking footage of the airport and everything, and editing was a nightmare afterwards. So kudos to Christian Henson. If you haven't seen his channel, go check it out. He gives away free stuff, but more important than the free stuff is just the advice and the life that man has led. So there's a lot to learn from him on the topic of learning from people. So thanks so much for watching Manchester Music. Write me some questions, leave some comments. Take care.